funny.
Hey, good morning, Maniacs. It's your boy Chris coming at you from the Morning Mayhem. Thanks for tuning in yet again. If you're just joining us for the first time, we welcome you to the Mayhem. Hope you had a great week. Hope everyone is doing well. Hey, real quick, what hot topics are going on in the news that you would be more interested in hearing more about? We can do some deep dives into it, look into it a little bit more, have some discussions about it. Make sure you leave that in the comments down below. Let me know so I can start looking into that a little bit. If you're interested in something specific, whether it be entertainment, whether it be politics, whatever it may be. If you're interested, I'm interested. So let's take a look at it together. This week, what do we got? We're going to look at more girl power behind the new or upcoming, I guess, announced Bride of Frankenstein reboot by Maggie Gyllenhaal, written and directed by her. We're going to revisit the conversation and push to move away from fossil fuels. Biden recalling a conversation right after he won the presidency, but with a world leader who died in 1996. How the mainstream news media is so out of touch and almost irrelevant in the real world. Who won the Republican primary in Nevada, if you don't already know. And one of the upcoming films recently announced that I'm super excited for, which is actually one of the few times I've ever been excited for anything that could be called a sequel or reboot or retelling or anything, which should be a sequel. But we'll get into that a little bit further into the show. First things first is the Emmys. Did you know that, or Grammys rather? See, I can't even get it right. Did you realize that the Grammys were this past Sunday? If you didn't, don't feel bad. I didn't know. And I just talked about the ratings of past Grammys and Emmys and all that stuff over the last 10 years and how they've been dropping. Well, one positive thing I'll say about this one is the ratings did actually go up a decent amount, 34%, I want to say, from last year to this year. But still, viewership overall was down. And if you did miss it, don't feel too bad. Here's what you missed.
I don't want to embarrass this young lady, but she has more Grammys than everyone and never won Album of the Year. So even by your own metrics, that doesn't work. Think about that. The most Grammys, never won Album of the Year. That doesn't work. Some of you gonna go home tonight and feel like you've been robbed. Some of you may get robbed. Some of you don't belong in the category. All right, no, that was it. No, when I get nervous, I tell the truth.
At one point, the singer called out the audience.
Why are you acting like you don't know this song? Stay up for hours.
I'm from the Southeast, like DJ Paul. I'm a black man in America, and as a kid, I had a dream to become a part of music. And that 9-year-old is excitedly dancing inside of me right now.
A few moments later.
And that was probably about it, honestly, of any interest anyway. So to start out, Jay-Z was honored with the Dr. Dre Global Impact Award, which is pretty cool. I mean, Jay-Z's had a ton of hits. Dr. Dre, phenomenal. That's great that he won that. Apparently that wasn't enough. He felt like his wife, Beyonce, who's had a ton of hits, no question about it. And she's apparently won more Grammys than anybody else, but never won Album of the Year. One begs the question of maybe she hasn't put out the best album of the year in a year. There's so many different categories. It's just like the uproar right now with Ryan Gosling getting nominated for his performance in Barbie, and Margot Robbie's not, and Greta Gerwig is not. And they, for some reason, think that because a man is nominated, that the woman can't be, or something like that, when really it's completely different categories. Ryan Gosling is up against other men in best male supporting actor or whatnot, and females for best lead actress, which would be Margot Robbie would be up against them. And apparently against the other females, the Academy didn't think that she deserved the nomination. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But that's the mindset behind it. Just because somebody has a lot of Grammys doesn't necessarily mean they should be winning Grammys in every category that they're in. So, maybe she hadn't put out the best album, and she certainly hadn't been cranking out anything lately that I'm aware of, and neither is Jay-Z. Listen to Jay-Z a little bit back in the day. I wasn't the biggest fan of his. I didn't listen to him all the time, but did listen to him some. But I hadn't heard anything recently. Hadn't heard anything really popping recently of his, Beyonce. So, it may be their time may be over with. I don't know. But yeah, apparently he was big mad his wife didn't win a Grammy for Album of the Year at any point in time. Then he started talking about people maybe shouldn't be in that category, throwing a little bit of shade. Audience seemed to pick up on it a little bit. So, maybe he's a little big mad and a little entitled, thinking he should be able to throw that weight around a little bit because he's Jay-Z. The next one up was Miley Cyrus. She did win her first Grammy, so, hats off to her for that. It was for Best Pop Solo Performance for her song Flowers, which was everywhere all year long. I heard it a ton, never really listened to it, but I heard it. So I knew it was around. I knew it was a big hit. Never listened to the lyrics, never paid attention to it. And apparently a lot of people didn't either, because you can hear her in the video at one point say, "Why y'all act like y'all don't know the words of this song?" So I don't know if that's more entitlement or she thinks it's bigger than it actually was. And maybe that's just not the audience. It would be funny that the people that go to the Grammys don't actually listen to the music that are up for nominations and stuff at the Grammys. That would be hilarious and not at all surprising. And then lastly, and that was Killer Mike. Killer Mike, from not my hometown, but home state of Georgia. He's from Atlanta. He's wrought with Outkast and so many others from the area. And one of my favorite songs with him and Outkast is The Whole World. Great song. Love it. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. That's an excellent song, but that's back in the day. But Killer Mike put out an album last year. Best rap song, best rap performance, best rap album. He won 3 Grammys and then got arrested. Apparently it was for a misdemeanor battery. I think it was one of the female security guards there at the award ceremony. Don't really know a whole lot of details on it at this moment. Don't know how legit it is or wasn't legit. People be throwing out charges all the time. But the good news is I don't know whether it's because he's Killer Mike or because it was in Los Angeles, but either way, got out, no cash bail, because that's how they roll out there in Cali. And again, it could just be because he's Killer Mike, represent Georgia. All right. Next up, we're going to look at the news media being basically worthless. I want to break down some elements of this video from NBC about current polls, which has the presenters shocked, but I don't think it has most Americans shocked, especially most Americans that are in the know, that are out there and in touch with their own communities, as opposed to like the entitled hoity-toities, people that are in their own little social bubble that never speak to people of other political parties or influence or anything like that. So people that actually get out and about and socialize and have their ear to the ground probably aren't so shocked like the news media is and some others. Let's check that out real quick. This is from NBC News. I'll kind of cut through it a little bit, but I do want to go over a few points as we play through it. So let's go ahead and get this thing going.
Good Sunday morning. We begin with our brand new NBC News poll, which brings more warning signs for President Biden and his re-election campaign.
I want to point out first that it's an NBC News poll. NBC, MSNBC, all the NBCs and all that, very left-leaning, very heavy on the liberal side. So if an NBC poll is not looking good for Biden, it's really not looking good for Biden. Just wanted to point that out, because a lot of times you'll hear about polls and sometimes you don't understand the validity of these polls, or if they're left-leaning or right-leaning or balanced or whatever. NBC News poll, very left-leaning. So this is really detrimental to the Biden campaign right now.
One of our pollsters tells us we are looking at a, quote, presidency in peril. With the general election just 9 months away, President Biden has declined on every measure since 2020, is struggling with key elements of his base, and now trails former President Donald Trump by wide margins on the issues voters say are most important to them. Joining me now to take us through the numbers is national political correspondent Steve Kornacki. Steve, these are some truly stunning numbers.
They really are, Kristen. And let's just start with the bottom line. When you ask.
So this is where he's supposed to start breaking it down, and it's going to get pretty sad pretty quick right off the bat. Let's go.
Folks, hey, if it's the general election and it's Trump versus Biden, in our poll, Donald Trump now leads Joe Biden by 5 points. Compare that to the last time we polled back in November. Trump was ahead then, but it was only by 2 points. It's even more significant when you look at it this way. Over time, we have been testing for 5 years now, going back to 2019, a Biden-Trump matchup. Remember, 2019, 2020, Joe Biden led. He led big in every single one of our polls. For the first time in November, Donald Trump pulled ahead in our poll, and now at 5 points, this is the biggest lead NBC has ever had in 16 polls for Donald Trump over Joe Biden. And, of course, undergirding all of this is this question of he is the incumbent, Joe Biden. We ask voters, what do you think of the job he's doing? And look at that, Kristen, 37% approve and now 60% disapprove.
And we should say that is the lowest approval rating since former President George W. Bush's second term.
Yeah, and it's put that in further context, too. Bush in his second term wasn't running for re-election. Yeah. Here's the presidents who were running for re-election in our poll starting their re-election year. What was their approval rating? Bush was over 50. He won. Obama was almost at 50. He won. Trump 4 years ago was 46. He lost. Look how low Biden's number is compared to those predecessors at this point.
Their numbers all much bigger than President Biden's.
It shows you the.
Yeah, those numbers are all bigger. If it wasn't obvious.
Dumbass.
Improvement Biden has to make here in the coming months. The issues that are driving this, too, the economy, no surprise, we've been talking about it, but look at that advantage for Trump. 22 points. Wow. And securing the border here, folks, say very important. Trump with a 35-point advantage.
And that's a big one right now, the economy. And they're going to try to spin it. And other people are going to try to spin it where they say our perception of the economy is not what it should be. We're not giving enough credit to Biden. They're not looking at the right numbers. In fact, we may get into that in a week or two. The numbers that they're looking at to determine how good the economy is doing versus what real Americans are having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. They're not the same numbers. It's not the same thing we're dealing with. And so they're going to try to spin it that we don't understand the reality of the economy and we won't give him credit. Keep an ear out for that because you're going to hear that several times, not just in this video, which I think they're going to say, but you're going to see that in articles and other videos as you watch this progress along. And then, of course, the securing the border. They're saying that Texas right now is trying to create a civil war against the United States because of, what they're trying to do with securing the border. Well, the percentages right there of differences between how they were doing between Biden and Trump tell you what most Americans feel. They don't feel it's Texas against the USA. They feel like it's the U.S. federal government against Texas and against its own citizens as far as securing the border goes. Let's watch a little more.
The economy is so striking, Steve, because jobs are up, inflation is down. Voters aren't giving him credit for that, clearly.
Yeah, there are a couple areas in here, I think, where Democrats see potential opportunities to grow Biden's support. Certainly, they are hoping the economy, folks change their perceptions of it and start rewarding Biden for it. That's what they're hoping, certainly. How about this, though? Also cautionary for the White House. Go back 4 years ago. There was two folks in their 70s running Biden versus Trump. And we asked then, do the candidates have the necessary physical, mental capacity? It was about even, 41-38. Now, you ask it, 46% say that Donald Trump does, just 23% when it comes to Joe Biden.
We're going to come back to that one in a little bit, but look at that necessary mental, physical health. We're going to come to that, come back to that in a little bit, but just keep that in mind.
I didn't think of one of the central themes of Biden's campaign in 2020. He said he'd be competent. He said he'd be effective. Folks said they believed that in our poll in 2020. One of the big reasons Trump lost, but now complete, total reversal. 48% say Trump competent and effective. Barely a third say that for Biden.
That's right. He said he was going to bring stability back to the White House.
And now he's the incumbent, and folks are maybe looking at him and maybe looking at Trump as not the incumbent in a different light here. Just a couple other things to get through on the foreign policy. Again, Israel, Hamas, center stage in the in the world picture right now. Overall, big disapproval for Biden on foreign policy, particularly on Israel, Hamas. That's particularly acute among the youngest voters, 18 to 34-year-olds. We have them tied. Trump versus Biden, and a lot of those Biden voters, 18 to 34.
Okay, we're going to get to this.
They say they don't like Biden.
We're going to get to this breakdown here in another video of the different categories of people, independence and age and race and stuff like that, because that's interesting. Not a very long clip, little clip. So stay with me. It's actually also from NBC. Let's jump over there real quick and let's check this one out.
Tick him up in the head-to-head with Trump. And then there's also this. Look at some of the weaknesses Biden has in our poll right now. Young voters, they were a big part of his coalition in 2020. We got a 42-42 tie, Biden and Trump. That's not good news for Biden. But the real issue here is there's a lack of enthusiasm and engagement, enthusiasm just to vote at all among this age group in our poll. The Biden folks are hoping that as the election nears, that interest level will rise. And while the young voters do not have generally favorable views of Biden, they also don't have favorable views of Trump. So the Biden folks hope that as young voters get more engaged in this, they'll ultimately decide basically they more want to vote against Trump than they want to vote against Biden. They see an opportunity for growth there. You also look here.
So we'll stop right there real quick. So they're shocked that the young voters are neck and neck. I mean, some of these people only know, some of these young voters only know of either an economy and a world under Biden, or they only know of an economy and a world under Biden and Trump. And they remember the difference between Trump and Biden, or they see what it's like under Biden right now. Right. So there's this contrast of these two, and that's all they know. You know, they're not old enough to remember Obama or Bush or any of those guys. But yeah, I mean, if you're contrasting the two, there's a stark difference. And the young voters right now, if I remember correctly, and it may be the next generation after these guys, I can't remember, seem to be considerably more conservative than the prior generation. Or Gen Z, X, all that stuff. I get confused about where I'm at and all this and that. But anyways, yeah, the young voters seem to be really more invested in truth telling. Again, we talked about last week when they're finding their news sources from independent creators or independent journalists. They're getting more of the truth, and a lot of this kind of garbage isn't getting pumped into their brains. Not nearly as much as older generations, but they're shocked because they have no idea. They haven't talked to anybody. Let's take a look. Let's go some more.
The Hispanic vote, basically even, Trump ahead by 1 point. That's something Republicans have been talking up the possibility of. They've got to like that. Among African Americans,
So what they don't realize about the Hispanic vote is a lot of these folks are the legal immigrants, people who came in, or they're, generationally through that of someone came in, became legalized and started their family, worked hard, built a business, whatever, and they're here legally. Right. And they're sick and tired of what's going on at the border. They're sick and tired of, their tax money that they're paying going to people that are crossing the border illegally. They're getting just as upset about it as folks that have born and raised here for generations and generations. But they're seeing that and they're really getting upset about that. That's a big area where Trump is picking up support in the Hispanic community, which is backfiring on the Democrats because they really thought they had that vote locked in. So this is really, really shocking to the Democrat Party and, of course, to, left-leaning NBC News here. Let's check out the black vote.
This is a solid lead for Joe Biden, 75-16%. But Democrats want to do better than that. They want to keep Trump in single digits here. They want to get this Biden number up, about 10, 15 points further from where it is. So that's where they would see opportunities for growth sort of demographically.
Well, Steve,
all right, so that's good. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate you so much there, buddy. Anyways, the percentage of black voters for Trump has been increasing steadily. You can look at that over time on several graphs. In fact, the black community really loved Trump back in the day until he ran for president, and the mainstream media told him, everybody, that he was racist and he was terrible and all this and that. And so the love for him dropped significantly because once you start throwing that R word around, it's a very triggering, very damaging word to call somebody or accuse somebody of being racist. So, that had a lot to do with it. But a lot of people are waking up, especially within the black community. This isn't good for Biden. It's not good for the Democrat Party. The people are supposed to be in the know. These people are supposed to be in the know, and they're very shocked. Which goes to tell you that they're not in the know. They have no idea what's going on in the real world. This is why so many people are tuning in to the independent sources, because they are so much more significantly in tune with the real world, more than these 6+ figure media personalities that are so far removed from reality. In fact, let's look at a couple of videos real quick. From Georgia, again, down here in Atlanta, in a predominantly black community. Let's see what their reaction was as Trump rolled through when he was being indicted.
Which one are you in, though? They got everybody.
All right. And again, that was through a predominantly black community in Atlanta, I guess, like Fulton County, if I'm not mistaken, or roundabout. And you can even see people wearing like blacks for Trump. There's a guy that's N-word for Trump, and he's out there promoting his, support for Donald Trump, and not ashamed one bit whatsoever. And plenty of black celebrities are starting to come out more and more in support of them and get on the Trump train. And you're really seeing a huge uptick in the black community for Trump. And again, that's pretty damaging to the Democrat Party, because they have had for forever such a stronghold on that community and their votes. Let's look at another video real quick.
There are some people in your orbit who are either voting for Donald Trump or considering it?
For sure. A lot of my friends are obviously my age, so we're a little younger. We've only voted once, for a president. And Trump is kind of all we know. And they're kind of Trump and Biden. They're like, well, we were broke with Biden. We weren't with Trump. And that's kind of the only thing that I'm hearing over and over again is that, well, Trump, we had money. Well, okay.
All right, so that was from an interview in South Carolina at a barbershop there. And broke with Biden, that sounds like a terrific slogan. I'm sure somebody's going to put that on a shirt if they hadn't already. I might do that. I've got a shop. I might put it in there. Broke with Biden. Let's see. But, all this stuff is just to say how unreliable and how untrustworthy the mainstream news media is. I mean, they keep cranking out garbage stuff to you. They're going to tell you someone's racist and they hate you and all that. 90% of everything out there, mainstream media in general, Hollywood, news media, is very left-leaning, very liberal. And I don't have a problem with some of that to a degree, because I think it's good to get some information from that side. But I also believe it's imperative to get it from right-leaning news sources as well, and the more balanced news sources if you can find them. Because once you have all the pieces, you can start putting the truth together, the reality together. You've got all these different pieces of the puzzle, and you can put them together. And I highly encourage you to go out there and seek that information and seek the knowledge. It may not be an easy dig at first, but you'll find a couple of YouTube channels or Rumble or whatever, and start following those guys. The Timcast is great. The Quartering is great. I talk about the Quartering all the time. Don't Walk Run Productions is one of my absolute favorite with Andrew. He does really, really deep dives. He knows what he's talking about. Mark Dice does deep dives into everything that he ever talks about. And check those guys out. Louder with Crowder always makes the sources available, and that's something that we do as well. So if anything I mention, from a YouTube video to an article to stats, it's always going to be in the description down below. You can always go back and fact check me. And if I'm doing something wrong, holler at me, let me know. But while we're on the topic of politics, real quick, if you didn't already know, who won the Nevada primary? Well, here's your answer. No one. None of these candidates won. So apparently the primary is pretty much pointless in Nevada. So Trump wasn't even on the ballot for it, because they're doing a caucus, and that's how you're going to get the delegates. But Nikki Haley did come in a respectable second right here with 32.4% of the vote behind the first place, which is none of these candidates at 61.2%. She lost to no one. Gotta love that. Absolutely gotta love that. Hey, real quick, guys, while we're here, I want to mention Coffee Brand Coffee. It's absolutely delicious. I purchase it all the time. I love the different flavors they option, the different strengths, and I love that it's brewed fresh. When you get the box and it comes in the mail, it just smells like you were just in a coffee shop and they just handed you what they just freshly roasted. It's amazing. I've been buying it and to lose weight. One of the things I've been trying to do is cut back on unnecessary sugars, and the better quality coffee requires less sugar and creamer and all that stuff. So I've been spending a little extra and buying that stuff. Now, it's not outrageously priced or anything. There's plenty other brands that you can get at the grocery store, or you can mail order just like theirs. And the prices are basically the exact same across the board, give or take here or there, whatnot. But very, very moderate priced for what you get. And what you get is you don't get some drop shipment that's made somewhere else. This is made in the USA. It's made by, what is it called? Hand roasted. I think the seasonal flavors they'll make in batches, but everything else they make it to order. Seasonal roasted or hand roasted to order, rather. So it's not sitting on the shelf somewhere. Did I say swear? It's not sitting on the shelf somewhere collecting dust or waiting for you to purchase it. They're also not political or gimmicky. That's one of the things I like about them. They're not going to Bud Light you or anything like that. They just want to sell you good quality coffee. And they do that very, very thoroughly. So go check them out, coffeebrandcoffee.com. Easy to remember, I know, but got a discount code over there for you, Mayhem. If you go use that code of Mayhem, you're going to save 10% off your purchase. It's going to let them know that our audience supports what they do and keep a great American company going. They started fairly recently, I'd say within the last year, and they're doing incredible numbers, doing great things, employing people here in this country, and making a great product. So go check them out, go support them. I'll have a direct link down in the description below as well. Moving on, let's take a look at this other article from Yahoo News. Boom. The world is moving toward an energy transition, but big oil is reluctant to give up fossil fuels. So this is a conversation, obviously, that's been going on for a long time, trying to get away from fossil fuels, big oil, and all this and that. No one makes a solid argument on it. They get called out. There was one I saw that was in Congress that was really good. He was saying, if we get rid of fossil fuels and oil, how are you going to make the plastic glasses or the plastic components that are in your phone and all this and that? And the person had no response for any of that. It's at this point in our life, it's a necessity, right? Fossil fuels are a necessity. Now we can say that over time, maybe we can replace them. And I'm okay with that. Look, I'm very conservative and right leaning for most things, I would think. But with some things, I'll lean to the left, or I'll lean more, moderately there to the middle. I'm okay with getting away from fossil fuels eventually. Completely okay with it. But I don't think you can put the cart ahead of the horse. I think we have to get there eventually. Now, look, what Elon is doing with EVs, and I know the other companies are following him, even though Biden and some of these others don't give Elon as much credit as they do the union backed brands, manufacturers there. But they're doing great work, and it's awesome. But it's not at the point yet that I think we're ready to go, 100% EV or alternative fuels. Fossil fuels are here to stay for a long, long time. If we get away from them eventually, that's fine. But we can't cut it off and expect everyone to move forward. The price of EVs, the price of the upkeep, if the battery needs to be replaced, the charging and other stuff. We're going to get to a little bit more of it, but we're not ready. But let's look at just a couple of things he calls out in this article. And of course, this is from Yahoo Finance. I don't really know about them one way or the other, how far left or right or whatever they are, but it's pretty obvious in reading this article that they're painting big oil as the bad guy. I want to call out a couple of things real quick though. Reading through it, it says countries may be moving toward green energy, but big oil is hardly all in, obviously. On Friday, 2 impact-oriented funds dropped a climate proposal intended to go to ExxonMobil. Shareholder vote after the Houston-based oil giant filed a lawsuit to remove measure from its proxy ballot. In the complaint, the oil producer said the activist investors, I want to say that's Arjuna Capital and Follow This, were driven by an extreme agenda and the goal of diminishing the company's existing business. Given Exxon's preference to fight a battle in court rather than allow shareholders the freedom of a vote at its annual meeting, we decided to withdraw the claim or the climate proposal. The founder of Follow This said in a statement on Friday, as ESG initiatives and investing styles fall out of favor, energy giants are doubling down on their core business for oil. Last year, ExxonMobil announced a near $60 billion deal to acquire Pioneer Natural Resources that will make it the largest player in U.S. shale. More than a week later, Chevron said it would buy oil explorer and producer Hess in an all-stock agreement valued at $53 billion. I'm almost done here. Big oil companies have posted blockbuster quarters following the start of the Russia-Ukraine war in 2002 as crude oil prices surged. So I'm going to stop right there for a couple of things. One, it mentioned up here ESG. What is ESG? Now, we've heard ESG before. If you're following my channel right now, you've probably listened to some of these other guys that talk about ESG scores real quick. Let's take a look at that. ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Environmental, social, and governance refers to a collection of corporate performance evaluation criteria that assesses the robustness of a company's governance mechanisms and its ability to effectively manage its environmental and social impacts. Examples of ESG data include the quantification of a company's carbon emissions, water consumption, or customer privacy breaches. Institutional investors, stock exchanges, and boards increasingly use sustainability and social responsibility disclosure information to explore the relationship between a company's management of ESG risk factors and its business performance. ESG scores have come up a lot in these companies that are pushing the social part more than anything. Not just oil companies or companies creating physical products, so to speak, but some that are doing creative products with Hollywood. You'll hear about ESG scores and social scores and all this and that going up and down if they're not giving the right message across the board. So ESG comes into play a lot with these people. Doesn't really matter to us as much as a society, I don't think, but whoever's pulling these purse strings has a big influence on it. Another thing that was called out in this article was the companies that are trying to get big oil to back down something. One of them is a company called Follow This. Okay. So who is Follow This? Let's take a look right here. This is from their website and just one little snippet I found. From their Paris climate goals. The entire industry will have to come around. Oil and gas companies will only survive if they become more sustainable, and without them, we will never be able to achieve the Paris climate goals. If that happens, we will be in much more danger. And it is not just our investments that are endangered, but our safety. In the coming years, we will find out whether halting climate change will even be possible. That's an interesting line. But one thing is certain, if we let the oil industry have their way for another 5 years, we don't have a chance. Now, this organization started from someone who was watching the Al Gore documentary on global warming and climate change, and he got all excited. He says, we got to do something. And they went out and started this, and they're trying to shut big oil down. Now, if you'll remember, when Joe Biden became president, one of the first things he did was start eliminating fracking and drilling and all this and that. And the Keystone Pipeline, which a lot of people will say has nothing to do with our oil, but it has something to do with jobs. And my point to this is that he said, we're going to eliminate those jobs. They need to learn coding or something like that. And then the folks were like, okay, cool. Where are these coding jobs? And the response was, well, they don't exist yet. And so we eliminated jobs, told them to go get this other job in this other field, but that other field wasn't ready for them yet. So we put the cart before the horse there. That's what the government does, I think. And that's what these guys are trying to do, trying to get everybody to move away from fossil fuels before we have sustainable alternatives that are just as good or as close to good as what we're getting from fossil fuels as far as mileage, dependability, and everything like that goes. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah. So let's check out what's going on with Teslas and the coal, right? So Teslas are dying in mass and Midwest freezing temperatures. You've probably seen this one. Let me pop it back up here for you. Boom. So this is an article from, this is Extreme Tech, and they're talking about the Teslas dying. Again, I'm not, crapping on Tesla by any means. Tesla makes a fine automobile. They're just number one. So, in this field, so they're going to have more written about them, more commentary about them. So that's why I'm using them as an example. But yeah, during the winter, they were freezing and the batteries were dying faster. The charges were taking longer. They weren't getting the same amount of mileage that they were supposed to be getting, apparently. Here's another one from the Daily Beast. Why Teslas are dying in Chicago's freezing cold weather. Down here, it talks about it's been a cold week in the U.S. with more than 150 million Americans living under a wind chill warning due to dangerously freezing temperatures. While the weather has resulted in infrastructure, public health, and even voting issues, it's also impacted a more surprising demographic: Tesla owners. Drivers in Chicago have been experiencing long lines at the supercharging stations and in some cases completely dead vehicles as their cars struggle to cope with the frigid weather. Tow trucks have also been called in to deal with Teslas that have occasionally been abandoned by their owners in the street after quickly losing power. I've been here for over 5 hours at this point, and I still have not gotten to charge my car. So we see that we don't have enough stations. We're not ready for it. The cold is clearly impacting them in a way. Now, I will say this. If anyone can fix this in this arena, it's definitely Elon. It's definitely Elon, because he's open to change. He's open to figure it out, and he wants to make a better product. Some of these other companies, I think, just want to make a more profitable product. And that's not always beneficial to society, especially if the goal here for so many of them is for us to move away from fossil fuels. And I was reading the comments where people were saying, what if you got stranded on the side of the road? Or what if, there was an accident on these winter roads and you had to sit there in your EV car with your family with the heat on for 2 hours while they tried to get everything unblocked? Well, your car could die, your heat could go out, and you guys could start freezing. So it was so much more. And I know you can run out of gas, but I think there's a little bit more to it than that. But yeah, I just feel like it would be extremely disastrous if we tried to get rid of fossil fuels right now. We're just not ready for it. We're not ready. The article mentions them having record profits. I wonder why. Activist groups like Arjuna Capital and the Follow This are going after them. ESG scores impacting their business in various ways, right? And in the U.S., a president that promised to eliminate fossil fuels. Remember this?
Would there be any place for fossil fuels, including coal and fracking, in a Biden administration?
No, we would work it out. We would make sure it's eliminated and no more subsidies for either one of those. I guarantee we're going to end fossil fuel. No new fracking. I'd gradually move away from fracking.
And I think it's critically important on day one that we end any fossil fuel leases on public lands.
What about, say, stopping fracking and stopping pipeline infrastructure?
They want to do the same thing I want to do. They want to phase out fossil fuels, and we're going to phase out fossil fuels.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
All right, so that video was put together on a YouTube channel by Swire. Now, I looked on there, and it looks like they maybe haven't uploaded anything in about a year. So I don't know if they're still active on there. But they have some interesting videos. Go check them out. A link to that video is in the description below, and a link to the channel is in the description below as well. But we see that prior to getting elected, they were talking about doing that. Now, if you listen to Karine Jean-Pierre or any of the other people talking on behalf of Biden, they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do anything that Trump wasn't doing. They didn't eliminate drilling and stuff. You can even go back to Jen Psaki saying that just wasn't true. Well, we just watched a video that has evidence that he was going to go after fossil fuels. So I can't blame the oil companies, right, for being in defense or in survival mode. Like, hey, yeah, we're going to stock it with money. We're going to buy up some competition. We're going to do what we can to survive. You're going to come at us and try to destroy us. Whereas Trump was like, drill, baby, drill. and they had good profits then too. But our prices at the pump were significantly lower. These are two different ways of doing business. One seemed to benefit us a little bit more than the other one did. Look, I believe more options equal more competitiveness. Okay. If we get something that can compete with fossil fuels, whether it be the EV car or some other kind of car, I don't know if a nuclear powered car is an option. I don't know. Seems a little crazy, and a little dangerous, especially with potentials for wrecks and stuff. But I mean, you know, I don't know what all's out there, but if we can find something, I'm all for it, because more competition means not just more competition as far as options go, but the price will be competitive and prices will come down, and that benefits us as well. Because right now, there's only a few companies that do what they do and offer what they offer, and they have a monopoly on it. Fossil fuels being one of them. So if fossil fuels had to compete more directly with EVs or some other alternative fuel, I think at the end of the day, we're going to benefit a lot more. And I'm always down with free market deciding what works and what doesn't work. I don't believe anybody has to push that stuff on you. That no longer makes it a free market, and I'm not a big fan of it. All right, let's move on to something else. This week, we're going to look at there's something wrong with Joe.
My name's Joe Biden.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
What are you doing?
Nothing. There's something wrong with Joe.
So I love how mainstream media usually latches on to any of, and you can call them gaffes that Trump has, mistakes, errors. Sure, absolutely. I don't think any of us are perfect. I think I've been speaking here for a few minutes, and I've made several misreadings or misinterpretations or stuttered or something like that. And I get that maybe when you're on a bigger stage and in such a big political role, you shouldn't make as many. I understand. I'm with you on that. If you're public speaking and you're out there, maybe you're held to a higher level. But I always get a kick out of the fact that if Trump makes the slightest mistake or the slightest, gaffe of anything of any kind, the media will latch onto it while ignoring or downplaying all the hundreds or thousands at this point that Biden's been doing, right? He mixed up Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi. Trump did recently, right? They have been running that nonstop, and Biden is putting that in one of his campaign ads. He walked down a ramp slowly one time. He had slick leather bottom shoes, right? No ramp, and it was drizzling or something like that day. So yeah, he walked slowly down the ramp, and they were like, "Oh, he's in mental decline. He's not fit, and all this and that." We've seen Biden literally fall upstairs, not just once, like 3 times in one journey up the steps, right? And then he's fallen plenty of other times too. The guy is just a gaffe machine. So we're going to look at one of the latest right here. Here's one from the New York Post. I'll call it out here. So Biden confuses the French president Emmanuel Macron with ex-leader Mitterrand, who died in 1996. Now, to get the full context, we'll throw the video up here real quick. Let's see if you guys can see that. Yeah. Oh, can't hear it. Come on, big fella. Turn you up.
Right after I was elected, I went to what they call a G7 meeting, all the NATO leaders. I was in the south of England. And I sat down and I said, "America's back." And Mitterrand from France looked at me.
He said right after he was elected, right? He was elected when? 2020, right? And he's talking about Mitterrand as of 2020 when he was elected president.
Me and said, why, how long are you back for? And I looked at him, and the Chancellor of Germany said, "What would you say, Mr. President, if you picked up the paper tomorrow in the London Times, and the London Times said, 1,000 people break through the House of Commons, break down the doors, 2 bobbies are killed in order to stop the election of the Prime Minister. What would you say?" I never thought about it from that perspective. What would we say if that happened in another democracy around the world?
All right, we heard the gaffe. Quick read real quick. President Biden on Sunday appeared to mix up French President Emmanuel Macron with a former leader of the European country who's been dead for nearly 3 decades. During a campaign speech in Las Vegas, the 81-year-old president inaccurately recalled speaking to former French President Francois Mitterrand, I think I heard him say it that way, who died in 1996 during a 2021 meeting with world leaders. It was the south of England, yada, yada, yada. We already heard all of that. So this isn't the first time that he has referenced someone who was dead and said that he just saw them, or I don't know why they're not here today in our meeting. I thought I just saw them walking through the crowd. No, they've been dead. You just posted about it on Twitter or whatever. You know, it's just, he doesn't know where he's at. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know if he's president or if it's Kamala or Obama. He's called them both presidents before during his presidency. Sometimes he thinks he's still in or running for a Senate seat. And as Shane Gillis put it, he turns into a Roomba after every speech and needs someone to hold his hand and lead him off the stage. I thought that was hilarious. If you hadn't seen that bit by Shane Gillis, that's pretty good. Just another example of the deceitfulness in the mainstream media news. But like they just pointed out on the NBC poll. See, I'm having a gaffe. Look at me. I'm not mentally fit. Never claimed to be. Back to this. As it shows here, Trump is 46% more in favor for being mentally and physically fit, both, right? Whereas Biden is half of that. So again, the mainstream media was shocked to hear those numbers. They couldn't believe people thought that. But people think that because people are aware of what's going on. We see it day in, day out. And even though they're not the ones talking about it, you can't fake live video. And video does live forever. The video that we just played that was put together about all the fracking and the fossil fuel and all that, that's going to live on forever. They can't deny that stuff happened. But yet they keep going on and they keep denying things are going on like that, and not to believe your lying eyes. We've heard that so many times. I'll say it so many times because that's what they want you to believe and that's what they're preaching. And that's one more piece of evidence that there's something wrong with Joe.
Let me start off with 2 words. Made in America.
What are you doing?
Nothing. There's something wrong with Joe.
All right, so I know I'm about to contradict myself with this next segment, but I think for the most part, we're overwhelmed with the reboots or the retellings or the sequels or the prequels that are all coming out. It's a little much, and that seems to be all that Hollywood is cranking out. But it looks like they may be trying to please modern audiences with a lot of these. Y'all see my dog, right? Big old scary pit bull. Ain't nothing but a little baby. He's my little boy. Hey, Ace. But they're rebooting a lot of the Universal monsters, or they're working on it. They've talked about it before. They tried to do it. It didn't work with some of the stuff. What was it, the Dark Universe? I think with the Mummy, that wasn't very good at all, despite the people involved. But here's one real quick that they are trying to reboot right now. Get pulled up. Bride of Frankenstein. It's being remade by Maggie Gyllenhaal. You probably know Maggie Gyllenhaal from The Dark Knight. She was in Donnie Darko, Jake Gyllenhaal's sister, obviously, and several other things. No doubt, a talented actress. I'm not going to knock any of that at all. But as Bounding Into Comics points out right here, Bride of Frankenstein remake about radical social change, and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, entering production. So they are working on this right now, or at least in pre-production for it. And I've got a cast that's getting pulled together. We'll look at a little bit of it here. And again, as you read it, remember that a lot of this reboot stuff and retelling seems to be more for the modern audience. See if there's any verbiage in here that catches your attention. It's alive. Universal's Dark Universe fell apart, but one of its pet projects is going forward under the direction of the Dark Knight's Maggie Gyllenhaal as her second feature. According to Fangoria, A remake of The Bride of Frankenstein moves into production next month with a star-studded cast, written, produced, and directed by Gyllenhaal. The film will star Christian Bale, Penelope Cruz, Jessie Buckley, Gyllenhaal's husband Peter Sarsgaard, and reportedly Annette Bening. A summary on productionlist.com offers insight into what part each of them is playing. A horror thriller about the Bride of Frankenstein, with Cruz as the bride Myrna, Bale as Frankenstein, and Sarsgaard playing a detective, it reads. Benning's role is a secret for now. Boris Karloff. Awesome. Anyways, an IMDb listing that only refers to the project as Untitled Maggie Gyllenhaal Project adds that it will be set in 1930s Chicago. This listing also provides a summary that offers more clues as to the film's tone and themes. In 1930s Chicago, Frankenstein asked Dr. Euphroneus to help create a companion. They give life to a murdered woman as the bride, sparking romance, police. Man, I'm just not on it today. Sparking romance, police interest, and radical social change. Says IMDb. The premise sounds similar to Poor Things, in which Frankenstein experiment revives Emma Stone's character with the brain of a fetus and turns her into an impulsive, sex-crazed brat. That and the talk of radical social change raises red flags about the movie we're dealing with. Since the collapse of the Dark Universe concept, Hollywood has been trying to revive old Universal monster properties in novel ways. Last year's crack at Dracula were hit and miss, but weren't positively woke. The Invisible Man was a smash and a riveting thriller, though it wore its feminism on its sleeves at times. Where they are going with all those loose reworkings of Frankenstein could bog down the revival of the classic monsters and the tired tropes the industry has been steadily alienating all fandoms with. Is this one better dead? Tell us your thoughts. All right, bounding into comics, here's my thoughts. The whole social part of it, the conversation that's getting started, that I can almost guarantee is in there, is unnecessary to the story. It is going to be put in for ESG to check that box, whatever it is, because we've got to have the conversation, right? Just make a good movie. Just make a good freaking movie, okay? We're not trying to put all this crap in there. The audience is tired of it. You want to talk about being bogged down? The audience isn't just bogged down of, Frankenstein reboots or this reboot or that. We're bogged down of that same old crap that just gets increasingly worse. More social justice engineering, virtue signaling. We're tired of it. No one wants to hear it, but yet you keep peddling it out there, and the audience that you're trying to appeal to lives on Twitter, lives on Instagram, lives on TikTok. They're not the ones spending money to go see your movies. They're the ones out there criticizing you and saying that you need this and that. And when they boycott your movie, it's okay, because they weren't going to go see it anyway. But when you keep putting crap out, the people that want to spend their hard-earned money are not going to spend it on your virtue signaling propaganda project. And if this is any indication of what's to come, this radical social, what did it say? Radical social change. Red flag. Red flag. Bounding into comics. Great article. For sure. Great write-up on that one. But yeah, one more part of this and we'll move on. This is from Pop Culture Junkie. Warner Brothers says I do to Maggie Gyllenhaal's Bride of Frankenstein movie after Netflix jilts the project. Netflix may have known what they were doing with this one, even though they've got their own issues as well. Just reading the first part here. Here comes the bride. Warner Brothers joins Universal and Lionsgate studios that are also producing films based on the classic monster movies of the 1930s. Maggie Gyllenhaal is directing a Bride of Frankenstein update that will begin filming soon. The film was once promised to Netflix, but the streamer reportedly dropped it due to a lack of star power, which I'm confused with. If you got Christian Bale and Annette Bening and all those guys in there, Penelope Cruz. However, Deadline reported Saturday that Annette Bening is the latest cast member to sign onto the roster. That now includes Jessie Buckley in the title role, along with Christian Bale, Penelope Cruz, Peter Sarsgaard. Right? Where is what I wanted to see? Warner Brothers reportedly picked up the project which is yet untitled, in an effort to have more movies about and directed by women. Movies about and directed by women. Having learned how successful that formula could be, as last year's top movie was their Greta Gerwig helmed Barbie. Now, they're not wrong. Barbie was the biggest film last year. It was very, very successful for them. My wife and daughter, God, they've watched it like 4 or 5 times now, at least. They love it. And a lot of people do. I mean, it did over $1 billion. Very successful movie. That's one example, right? Just one example. There's some other examples that I don't know how closely they paid attention to about woman-led films written, directed by women, women focused. When you make films that are all about that, that's all they're about. You lose so much of it. Here's a couple of examples that I know they couldn't possibly be referring to as successful, women-driven, women-led, women-directed films. How about Black Widow? Box office, Black Widow is either 2021's most successful disappointment or its most disappointing success. Directed by Kate Shortland. If you can't tell, female. The Eternals. Los Angeles Times says why Eternals is a box office disappointment for the blockbuster MCU. Directed by Chloe Zhao, female. The Marvels. In Variety, The Marvels ends box office run as lowest grossing MCU movie in history. Directed by Nia DaCosta, female. Or maybe they meant the excitement around these hyped up films that are coming out that are written, directed by women, starring women, focused on women, like Madam Web, doing worse than infamous Marvel flop, directed by S.J. Clarkson, female. Or the Ray Palpatine-led Star Wars film, or films, however they go with it. Again, but from Variety, Daisy Ridley's new Star Wars director says it's about time we had a female filmmaker come forward to shape the galaxy far, far away, and that is Charmin Obaid-Chinoy. And of course, that has not been getting received well. Aside from all the garbage that Star Wars pumped out recently that the fans are not excited about, that announcement, not just because Daisy Ridley, she seems like she seems like a sweetheart, don't get me wrong. I don't think a lot of people love the character of Rey, how Rey was built, how Rey was portrayed, how they ended everything with Rey, and to know that they're bringing her back to lead this new film or series has already got them in a knot. And then to have the focus being female led, female written, female directed, it's just not looking to be a successful combination over and over again, enough for them to point it out. Now, Barbie, I think, is more so the exception than the rule. And I will say there are plenty of very, very successful blockbuster films, or just successful films in general, that were directed by women that may or may not have featured, a woman lead or about womanhood or anything like that. I think when the focus is just telling a good story, you get things like Wonder Woman. You get things like American Psycho, which I absolutely love that movie, and my wife is terrified that I do. But when the focus is just telling a freaking good story, that's going to go a lot farther than all the virtue signaling and I am woman, hear me roar. So take that for what it's worth. Don't know how the new Universal monster launch is going to go, but definitely some red flags with that one. Hey, while I got you guys, I want to talk to you about another partner that I'm really, really excited to work with, Gruntworks Meat Company. You may have heard me talk about them before. Got a discount code for you here. Mayhem 10 is going to get you 10% off everything that they have. Let me tell you, if you like quality meats, but you would prefer to pay grocery store prices, these are the guys to check out. They've got everything from ground beef to brisket to short rib. They've even got organs. And I say that not to gross anybody out, but if you're on the carnivore diet, you probably looked into trying, or you are actively eating the organs, which is awesome. And if you're not into organs, that's fine too. But they've got quite a variety of all kinds of beef. It's local U.S. Grown, grass-fed, Wagyu, Angus. They got the regular cuts, pasture-raised, never antibiotics, hormones, GMOs, or pesticides. Fantastic company, fantastic product. And when I say grocery store prices, every item is going to vary, of course, no question about it. But I can get ground beef from them, top-notch quality ground beef from them, and it's just simple ground beef, right? Significantly cheaper than what I can at the Kroger right down the street. So for a top quality meat company to offer a better product at the same or lower prices, I'm all about it. And not only do they tout how they're, made in America, everything's grown in America and everything like that, they're also a very veteran focused company. So 10 cents of every pound of every meat that they sell, they donate to a veterans organization that they work with. They also have veterans that help co-found or whatnot, Gruntworks that they work hand in hand with. So they're a great company to do business with. If you're into the meats, definitely go check them out. And then make sure you use discount code Mayhem10 to get 10% off your entire order. All right, gonna close it out now with this last one. Again, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit. Okay, so there's been a big announcement. I say big announcement because it's something I'm looking forward to. Most other people may not think it's that big, but if you're a fan, you're going to enjoy this. There's going to be a new sequel movie or sequel series, possibly not series, but a couple of films possibly that are coming out or in pre-production right now. Check this out.
We shot it in the summer of 2001. And they had cameras all over the place, but they were these domestic cameras with the little. Do you remember the ones with the little tiny little cartridges? It was before HD or anything like that. DV, the good old days of DV. It's a brilliant script by Alex Garland. Where you put an ordinary man in these extraordinary situations, how do you react? And that's why people identify with the movie, because it was like a reimagining of the zombie genre, but also a kind of an examination of what would one do in that sort of scenario, and it's a fight or flight thing.
So that was Cillian Murphy talking about 28 Days Later that came out, like he said, in 2001. They have announced that they are looking at doing 28 Years Later, and they've got a deal landed with Sony. So I'm excited about that because in my humble yet accurate opinion, 28 Days Later is one of the grittiest, dirtiest, ugliest, realistic, exciting, heart-pumping zombie films that we've ever had. And I'll get into some of the other ones that I think are top-notch, and there are, the generics out there and everything like that. I really do think that 28 Days Later was potentially responsible for relaunching and updating that zombie genre. We'll get into that in a minute. But first, let's check out this article from The Hollywood Reporter. Zombie sequel 28 Years Later lands at Sony exclusively. Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are behind the long gestating 28 Days Later sequel, which could launch a trilogy of zombie films and may return Cillian Murphy to his breakout role. So you got the original writer and director involved. Not only that, I'm excited because there's more. 28 years later, the hot package from director Danny Boyle and writer Alex Garland has landed at Sony. The Culver City-based studio has come out on top after a protracted bidding war to win the rights to the sequel package to the 2002 horror classic 28 Days Later. Director Danny Boyle and writer Alex Garland have reunited to write and direct the sequel, which also comes with a part 2 to be written by Garland. Boyle would only direct the first project, with the sequel's director to be determined at a later stage. I'm okay with doing it. I'm a filmmaker. I'll take that on. Cillian Murphy, whose career was launched thanks to the original movie, is also returning as an executive producer, so he's going to be involved too. Danny Boyle makes awesome films. Cillian Murphy, awesome actor. Can't wait to see what they do. Of course, the Oppenheimer star could also possibly act in the project, although details are being quarantined. I'm just a little giddy. I'm a little excited, and I'm sorry. But I absolutely love 28 Days Later. 28 Weeks Later was pretty good too. I'm not going to knock it at all. But I'm a huge 28 Days Later fan. Top 3 zombie movies. In my humble yet accurate opinion, hey buddy, you heard zombie, they're okay. They ain't gonna get you. Top 3 zombie movies in my humble yet accurate opinion are George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. I think we owe so much to George Romero for really creating the zombies that we know today, from any iteration from way back in the day. George Romero's Night of the Living Dead by far relaunched that genre and made it significantly more interesting. And before the virtual signaling was such a big deal, I will make it a point that he wanted his protagonist to be a black man. And at that time, it was not the biggest thing in the world to have a black lead or black protagonist, especially in a horror film. But he really, really pushed for that. He got it. Amazing film. It was groundbreaking. Love it. George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Another one, Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead, which is a remake of George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, which was also awesome. George Romero's Dawn of the Dead is one of my favorites as well, but I don't think it's as revolutionary, obviously, as Night of the Living Dead. And then Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead really brought these zombies an updated look, an updated feel, and we'll get into that in a minute as to where the influences may have come from. But man, what an awesome film, and probably one of Zack Snyder's better films, to be honest. I like some of his stuff. I'm not the biggest fan of some of his other stuff, but Dawn of the Dead was absolutely fantastic. And of course, Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later. And I say Danny Boyle's, Alex Garland wrote on it. Cillian Murphy did a fantastic job in acting on it. And I actually have my old camera still that I shot my very first short film with, was a mini DV camera with a little DV tape. And those things are fun to play with. I still have the camera. I still have the little tapes. And man, what a terrible quality image. But it really puts you right there in it, and it really made you feel like this could happen, and this is what it would be like. It's not pretty, it's not high production with sets and everything. No, it's in your face now. So if you have not seen 28 Days Later, as soon as this video ends, you need to find it on whatever streaming platform and watch it. 28 Days Later should be required for anyone who's interested in the zombie genre at all. And I think overall just required, because good Lord, such a good movie. Sorry, I'm a big fan. All right. So a couple of fun facts that I found. 28 Days Later released in 2002. The Walking Dead, not the show, but the comics, which the show is based off of. The Walking Dead comics began publication in 2003. Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead was released in 2004. So you can't say that one influenced the other necessarily, because I think some of the filmmakers or the authors of the comic books can say, oh no, we didn't know anything about the other. But it's odd to me that 28 Days Later came out with this whole brand new running, aggressive, crazy zombie, and then all these other films and series picked up on it and started using the same kind of stuff for a lot of their zombies, or even with The Walking Dead, not necessarily running fast or anything, but just, it's a whole different level of the zombie that we're seeing. And of course, The Walking Dead opens very, very similarly to the opening of 28 Days Later. So that's just an observation I made, a little fun fact on finding out when everything came out. And maybe it's interesting to you, maybe it's not, but I definitely recommend seeing 28 Days Later. That's it, guys. That's pretty much it. I appreciate you sticking with me this long. Remember that we will have our weekly long form show up every Friday at 10 a.m. unless otherwise announced. We'll also be cutting up these segments into smaller bite-sized pieces called nuggets that we'll be releasing throughout the week. And I may also post something randomly from time to time if something exciting comes up, or something newsworthy comes up that just needs to break right then and there, or if I'm just interested in sharing something with you guys. And with all that said, if you stay with me this far, please be sure to hit the like button below, subscribe or follow. And if you want to see more, and if you feel like other people need to see this. Definitely hit the share button, share it with them, tell them about it. And guys, thank you so much. We will see you next time.
Drinking and driving, a lot of people say it's wrong, and I call these people the cops. But you know what? Sometimes you got no choice. Those kids got to get to school. Am I right?